Hey everyone, welcome to the KE Report and a company update from Kuya Silver. Chatting with David Stein, President and CEO of Kuya Silver. Company is traded on the CSE under the symbol KUYA, on the OTCQB under the symbol KUYAF, and the Frankfurt Exchange 6MR1. Now, David and I are going to be providing a bit of an update here, more of a big picture overview of what's going on with the company. Production continuing to ramp up at the Bethania Project in Peru, as well as just a quick update on the exploration front at the Silver Kings Project in Ontario. Now, David, I know most of the questions that I'm getting regarding Kuya is all about production continuing to ramp up. I know the target being 350 tons per day. What can you tell us, David, about how the mine, Bethania mine, is running currently?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Corey. Look, overall, we're pretty happy. The mine has been operating as expected and really no significant surprises. So that's been very good. I think that we've started the operation with limited capital. We've done very well with what we've had to sort of get to where we are now. And I guess we're in a bit of a quiet period, if you will, having kind of just started production and not gone through a full quarter yet. But, I would say into April and then even more so in the second half of the year, we should be able to provide very regular updates to the market about the ramp up at Bethania. And, for us, this is just the very first step of many to really optimize and demonstrate the huge value potential that we see at Bethania. We decided several years ago to focus on production, and now we're delivering on that. So it's sort of a balance between getting the ramp up right now, which I think we're in a good position to do that, and then at the same time have our eye on the big prize, which is to build a much bigger mine here and a silver mining district entirely controlled by Kuya.
So, David, let's talk about the stepping stones that you need to get here, because it was late last year that you announced the first concentrate sale. Again, the whole plan to ramp up to 350 tons per day, at least in the near term. What are the steps here? What is the longer term potential of this project? If you could walk us through maybe your phased approach.
Sure. So, ramping up right now, we had our first sales of concentrate in October. We continue to do quite a bit of development in November, December, I would say. We've gotten more, regular production since the beginning of January. And that's ramping up, kind of month over month. And we're looking to kind of accelerate that with thanks to the financing that we're, doing right now as well. Side note on that. But yeah, so that's kind of what's happening right now, phase 0, if you will. And I guess phase 1 is getting to 350 tons per day, as you mentioned. That's currently what we're permitted to do. And we'll do that by continuing to toll mill. And for those who aren't familiar with toll milling, it's kind of like renting another plant. So we have another plant nearby that we use to crush, grind, and process our material into concentrate, which is actually the product that we sell. What I'm kind of looking at is phase 1B then will be to build our own plant. We don't need it per se at the levels we're currently doing, but in order to expand beyond 350 tons per day, it's very important. We think it's very important strategically to build that phase 1 plant that we're already fully permitted to do. And, back in 2022, when we did the first version of our PEA, the cost of that was estimated at around 14 million. So if you want to bump that up for inflation, today you're probably looking at 18 to 20 million. And, we want to fund that as much through cash flow as we can. So that's kind of phase 1B. And then ultimately, as we start churning cash flow from the mine, we're building our own plant. I think we can also borrow a bit of money for that as well, because it's a very quick payback. It's a pretty low risk project finance opportunity. And then, the exploration potential at Bethania is huge, and we've barely touched the exploration there. Just, the drill program that we did to get our current mine plan. So, we think we can, arm wave to see well over 100 million ounces from the camp between the extending Bethania at depth along strike, where we have the extensions mapped and sampled at surface. We know where the veins are. We know they're high grade silver veins continuing. to the east. We have those two other satellite zones, Carmelitas and Tito, which each of which look like they could be another Bethania in terms of the scale and footprint on surface. So we've got lots and lots of opportunity to grow this resource. And then as we're doing that, we can then start to factor in an expansion to the plant. And those are all the kind of the phases, and they all kind of can happen at the same time. In fact, we could be drilling, growing our resource, doing the permitting to expand the plant from 350 to something bigger than that, 1,000, maybe even more, maybe even a bit more than that. And that's where we want to take this thing in the next few years.
Okay, so that makes sense. So first things first, let's get cash flowing at that 350 tons per day. Then you can look at building that plant and going more aggressively at exploration. Since that first stepping stone is that 350 tons per day mining rate, can you give us a general time frame of when the company could be at that level?
Yeah, look, I think we're tracking for that to be, towards the end of this year at the moment. But these things tend to be, it tends to be bumpy, so that, give us kind of plus or minus a few months on that. At the same time, I think that, to be honest, where our share price is trading right now, I mean, even if we were able to get to 200 tons per day, we'd be making, quite a bit of money, quite a bit of cash flow doing that. We'd be very, very profitable, and we should have a much, much higher share price. I don't think our share price reflects any cash flow at the moment. And certainly if you give us a multiple of any type of cash flow, even less than 350 tons per day, you're looking at a share price that's a lot higher than where it is today. So I guess what I'm saying is, yeah, we've got a target there. It is realistic, and we're going to work hard to hit that target. But at the same time, it's not an all or nothing situation for our shareholders here. We can make money along the way as we do ramp up, as we get closer and closer to that, kind of phase one target. And as we do that, our share price should have a revaluation, in my opinion.
So, David, I think you are right. So much of the market is focused on production, getting to cash flow at the Bethania Project. What sort of news can we keep our eyes out for? What will you be releasing to market to show us the progress of this ramp up?
So first thing, I think in April, we can put out some disclosure on the first quarter and, what we have been able to accomplish at the mine there. And then I think from there, we can kind of set some benchmarks that we can then report on a more regular basis for the remainder of the year and into 2026.
So, David, you even brought up the financing, $2.5 million financing underway. You've already closed one tranche of this. What is this money going to be used for? It's obviously needed to continue to ramp up this mine, but give us a lay of the land of why you need to raise now, please.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the market and what we've been able to get at Bethania so far, I felt like the timing was right to kind of give Bethania a shot in the arm. And, I think we were on track to get to 350 either way, but, having a little additional capital allows us to do more development. So I think the majority of this financing is going to be basically spent on development at Bethania. And that will allow us to get over the hump into profitability and kind of accelerate the ramp up that much faster. So, it was a situation where, I mean, we have not raised a lot of money in the last, few years. If you go look at our press releases, we've hardly raised any money compared to our peers. And obviously that's important. Investors don't like dilution. I don't like dilution as a major shareholder either. But it came to the point where I am thinking, we have such a huge project here, huge potential. It's really a shame to starve it of capital when it can be used effectively to generate a much higher return. And at the same time, we're starting to see some real momentum in the silver space, silver $33, $34 an ounce. So it was a tough decision, I have to be honest, but we decided is the right one, and very happy. And it's honestly we've had great feedback and great support from existing shareholders on it.
Okay, so you mentioned there this better silver environment. As we're chatting here, silver is still over $34 an ounce. This is a silver primary asset from what I understand. Everything is reported in silver equivalent ounces. So just how exposed is the company to the higher silver price as you are going through this ramp up? And give us, I guess, a little insights on how that could adjust some of your cash flow estimates as well.
Yeah, well, look, we are very exposed to silver. We get 80% of our revenue from silver from the Bethania mine. So, I mean, if you're bullish on silver, it'll be tough for you to find a, a junior company more exposed to silver than us. So we are a great option if you are bullish on silver. And look, I think with the silver price, we've been lately running kind of our models and forecasts and guidance around at $30 silver. So when we talk about, how much cash flow we could make at 350 tons per day, given our expected cost base, et cetera, at that level, we'd be looking at somewhere in and around 20 million a year in cash flow. If we go to 34, essentially it adds another kind of $4 to $5 million to the forecast there. So it's kind of that simple. And, we're very happy. I've been following the precious metals market my entire career, going back 25 years. I personally think that, silver could go much higher in this kind of bull market, precious metals bull market we're in, given where gold is, given the propensity for silver to kind of catch up and then eventually outperform gold, which it's done in pretty much every bull market since the 70s, since gold was, allowed to trade at its own price freely. We've seen this over and over again every few years. So I think it's a great opportunity. Silver could go to 60, 75, $90, $100 an ounce here over the next few years. And obviously, that would be great for Kuya and for our mine.
So, David, because of this environment, right, where silver is doing very well, it's a higher price environment. And as you said, you're directly exposed to silver with 80% of your revenues. Any way that you can ramp up this whole plan, not just this ramp up to 350 tons per day, but that whole 100 plan of the 100 million ounces and $100 million a year in cash flow?
Well, it's always a trade off between, time and money, Corey, and obviously time has a value. And that's what the financial analysts have a discount rate in their NPV models and all that kind of stuff. So, time is money. And obviously, if we get into a better market, I guess a couple of things happen, right? One is we'll be making more cash flow. So we can start to reinvest organically, organic growth, both in exploration and potentially, using the equity portion of the capex we need to build our plant. So that could happen sooner if the silver price goes up even more. And then, if we get into a real juicy silver bull market, which I don't think we've really seen yet, something more like what we saw in the, 2007 to 2010 era, companies like Kuya, our share price should be way higher than it is today. And I guess a couple of reasons. One is the rising tide floats all boats. But then the second reason is that the generalist investors, who are the marginal buyers of assets in a bull market, they're going to prefer to go to a producer over an exploration company. I feel strongly that's the case. I know a lot of your listeners hear a lot about exploration companies, but I think no one wants to do a BSc in geology just to figure out whether they should buy a stock or not. But pretty much anyone can look at a earnings or income statement and figure out if the company's making money and how much money they're making. And as a producer, we're going to be able to kind of give people that real simple story. Like, we're producing this much silver, this is our profit, this is how much production we have, etc. And I think that goes a long way. I mean, you look at some of the larger cap silver focused producers already have pretty high valuations on a cash flow basis. And again, it's just because there's so few of them. So investors who do decide to go into silver, who don't want to touch exploration, they buy, the 5 or 6 silver producers out there, the bigger ones, and, they bid up those valuations. That momentum is going to eventually come to Kuya. So, that'll give us a lot more of a currency to go out and accelerate growth through exploration, through, building equipment like mills, and, who knows, maybe even buying other mines.
Okay. Well, one thing to know right now as we're recording this, the market capitalization of Kuya Silver, right around $37 million Canadian. Now, David, quick update on the exploration front from Silver Kings, this project in Ontario. You released some drill results earlier this year, I believe back in January, but What's going on at Silver Kings on the exploration front?
Yeah, first of all, we were thrilled with those exploration results that we put out in January. That was a big game changer for us. The widest zone of silver mineralization that, certainly we've ever hit, and possibly, anyone over the last number of decades in the cobalt camp. So, a real game changer. We've definitely got a lot of good, feedback, especially from industry, on what we've been able to do there. So we wrapped up our drill program, our kind of 24-25 drill program, wrapped up a couple of weeks ago, actually right before PDAC, end of February. And so we're just getting results back from the lab now. And we'll put out one more press release on that once we get all the results and explain to the market what we think we have there. And then we'll have to reevaluate or evaluate the project, once we get all the results and see what we do next.
Okay. Well, David, we'll wrap it up here. Thank you for that update. Again, more on the big picture, what's going on at Bethania. I'll post a link to the company's website in the show notes so you can read over the recent news, but even more importantly, go look through the company's presentation and look at their big picture plans for Bethania. Right now, I'll follow up with you, David, and get more information as you progress towards that 350 tons per day and whenever we see some quarterly results as well. So please, everyone, click that link in the show notes and send me any questions you have for David regarding the Bethania Project and even the Silver Kings Project. David, thank you for the update today.
Thanks a lot, Corey. My pleasure.